Okay, good morning, Ethan. So what we're going to do today is we're going to learn a quick passage in the Gemara, and then we'll get to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that discusses that passage. So I hope we're discovering here that the Gemara is considering that it's just a conglomerate of conversations that happen over centuries. So it's not organized by topic, and you'll have one topic that's scattered throughout all of the Gemara, and then the Shulchan Aruch will collect from all these various different places in the Gemara and put it together. So it's like pieces of a puzzle. So it's hard to select, which passage in the Gemara do you want to take down to the Shulchan Aruch, because oftentimes we're missing most of the information which comes from somewhere else. So, for example, in the last text we discussed someone pronouncing that he's done eating and that having an effect on which bracha they make at what point. We only had one little snippet in regard to someone drinking wine, but that's one little piece in the puzzle, which creates a much larger chapter in the Shulchan Aruch, which is taken mostly from Masechta Brachos. And the same thing with the Havdalah. For example, today we're going to be learning about the candle for Havdalah. So the laws of the candle for Havdalah comes elsewhere, Brachos. But there's one particular halacha which is sourced here. So we're going to zoom in on that particular halacha, which is basically the idea that one should use a torch rather than a simple candle. A torch has multiple wicks, so that's it. The source is going to be in the line here. So we're going to learn the relevant passage in the Shulchan Aruch that's taken from this line, these few lines, and the commentaries that follow those few lines. So that's what we're going to do today. We did it with other sections also, where we just took out one little piece of the Shulchan Aruch instead of going through the whole chapter, because the whole chapter is made up of much more details. But the chapter we're going to look at today is all the laws regarding the candle, which is not just the fact that it has to be a torch, but how you look at it, how you make the bracha, the fact that you have to have it at all, and all of that. But we're looking at one detail, considering that comes up here in our Gemara. So let's see. We are on Kuf Gimel Amud Beis 103b. And it's about a third from the bottom of the page, a little below half from the bottom of the page, a little below halfway. And the second word is ki mata. The first word is mashtia, from drinking, and then the second word is ki mata. Okay. So this is all still that narrative of who is observing who. It's who's it again? It is, we're going back to Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, who is observing Rava, which was the original narrative that we introduced to discuss this whole thing. He was the one who told us, or we observed, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov observed him making two brachas on the wine, one at the beginning of the meal, and that covered all of the wine, and then another bracha on the wine that he drank after his benching, after his grace. And we interrupted that narrative with that whole discussion, and now we're back to that narrative. Yeah? So, Kimata Lavduli, when Rava came to making Havdalah. So Kam Shamye, his attendant got up. So which means Rava has another attendant aside for Rav Acha, his student who's attending to him. He has his own actual attendant, it seems like. And so Rava's attendant got up, Kam Shamye, Adlak Avuka Mishraga, lit a torch from a flame. The difference between a flame and a torch is a flame is on one wick and a torch is on more than one wick. So essentially a difference. So he lit a torch from a candle. So Amalei, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, was observing this, turns to Rava and asks him, again, that's the whole point of this, Rav Acha attending to him as to observe as a practice, right? He asked him about making the two brachas of wine, and now he's asking him about the candle. He says, Amalei, he said to him, why are you going out of your way? You already have a flame. What do you need to light a torch from it for? Haman Chashraga, you have your flame right here. Amar Lei, so Rava said back to him, my attendant is doing it on his own. Like, don't ask me why my attendant's doing that. He's doing it on his own. Yeah, I didn't tell him to go light the torch. I'm just going back and forth to Rashbam here. I didn't tell him to light the torch. He did it on his own. Amarle, so Rav Acha says to Rava, no. Eloi Shama Leminei, if he didn't hear it from you, Minei Demarv, if he didn't hear it from master, meaning you, Rava, Loyava of it, he wouldn't do it on his own. So he's pressing him for it. So Amarle, Rava says to him, Loi Savale Mar, do you not agree that Avuka LaHavdalah Mitzvah Mufkar, that lighting a torch for Havdalah is the choicest way to do the mitzvah? End conversation. Okay, which is it? We're gonna go to the halacha, straight to the halacha, but I'm just want to put it out there. This is a very
weird. He says, "Why are you lighting the tub?" And then saying, "Don't you know you should light it?" Then?
Right. First, he tells him, "Oh yeah, my attendant did it on his own," and then the student says, "No, your attendant wouldn't do it unless you asked." And then he gives him the reason, and then the way he gives him the reason is if like, "Don't you know already?" Yeah. It's such a funny kind of conversation. I'm not really sure what to make of it, and I'm sure there are commentaries on it. But just my instinct is telling me.
Maybe he studied it and didn't remember.
Sorry?
Maybe he studied it a while ago and didn't remember.
The teacher?
The student.
Right, but why is this interaction? Why when his student first, when Yaakov first asked him, he should have said, "Don't you know that you're supposed to do the torch?" Why does he first say, "Oh, my attendant did it alone, on his own accord"? And then he says, "Oh, now that you're pressing it, I'll tell you." Such a funny. Rashbam amends the text a little bit, and it could be that's why. Anyway, but perhaps what's going on here is a lesson in education. No, I think he wants to press him to see. He wants to press a student to see what kind of reaction. Is he just going to take it when I tell him that the student?
Does he actually care to know?
Yeah, when I tell him that my attendant did it on his own, does he have the insight to realize no such thing? Everything is precise. And if he's that kind of student, then maybe. That's what I'm thinking. Anyway, okay, just sidebar. Okay, so with that, let's go to the text I texted you. I sent you a link. Judge, I'll send you. You have your phone with you?
Yes. No, I don't. I'm so sorry.
Okay, you can follow along there. Okay, so we're looking at just two subsections of the Alter Shulchan Aruch. This is chapter Reish Tzadok Ches. That's 298 in the Alter Shulchan Aruch that goes through the laws of. You can see the title at the top. It says laws governing the Havdalah candle. Right, that's what it says there.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of details, starting with what bracha you make and the fact that you have to. How crazy should you make yourself to go find the candle? What do you do if you're not making Havdalah till much later? Do you make the bracha of the candle right away? All kinds of details around the bracha of the candle. But we're just going to focus on this particular halacha that we learned here, which is the source for this halacha, that in the best case, doesn't say that it has to be. He says, mitzvah min mufchar. He doesn't say you're required to have a torch. He says it's the choicest way to do the mitzvah. So we're going to focus on that detail.
So it's not a halacha?
It's a halacha, but it's a halacha that isn't, in other words, it's the halacha telling you this is the best way to do it. If you don't have it, you can do on the regular candle too, as we'll see. Because he tells them mitzvah min mufchar. It's the best way to do the mitzvah. But it isn't, the word in Hebrew is likuva. Likuva means like it's not, if you don't have it, it doesn't undo the mitzvah. There are certain things that are essential to any mitzvah. And if you don't have it, you didn't do the mitzvah. Mm-hmm. But then there are details that augment the mitzvah, but they don't necessarily undo the mitzvah if you lack them. Yeah, mitzvah min mufchar, the best way to do the mitzvah. So let's see. So halacha number 4, halacha dalet. Now I'll read it in the Hebrew and you can follow in English.
Scroll down to number 4.
Yeah, scroll down to number 4 because that's the section that discusses this detail.
Okay.
Mitzvah min mufchar, it's the choicest and the most optimum manner of doing a mitzvah. Levarach alavuka, to make a blessing over a torch. Yeah, that comes from our Gemara. Okay, that's what it says in footnote 13. I'm sorry, footnote 13. Sheyesh ba eitzim harbe. There are a number of eitzim. Literally means pieces of wood, but means wicks. Many different things that are burning at once, and therefore ma'odes harbe. It produces multiple flames. That's the point here. Why? Why do we want this? The Gemara didn't explain. Says the Alter Rebbe, because the bracha we make is creator of flames that illuminate, or flames of fire, actually, flames of fire, or illuminations of fire. And illuminations is in the plural. Here they translate in English, who created the lights of fire, lights. But it's in the plural. Actually, ma'odeh is not light. Ma'odeh is like flames, the sources of light. Or is light. But this is, as opposed to the Gemara elsewhere discusses the dispute between Shammai and Hillel as to what bracha you make on the B'nai Ma'odeh Eish. B'nai Ma'odeh Eish, or by Shammai's version, I don't remember, it's in brachas. But in Shammai's version, I don't think it's plural. I don't remember what it was. But we say B'nai Ma'odeh Eish, plural flames. So now you don't have to have a plural flames to make that blessing valid. So for example, you say, "Blessed are you, God, the Lord, who creates fruit from the ground." Right? Pri haetz. Tree is in the plural. Fruits of the tree. I don't have to eat multiple fruits to substantiate that blessing. I'm thanking you for creating fruits in general, of which I'm eating one. So the same thing would be with the flames, who created flames from fire, or lights from fire, and I'm enjoying one of them. So which means if I don't have more than one flame, the bracha is not invalid. It's still valid, because it still fits. The grammar still fits, but it augments it. It makes it even nicer if I'm actually holding multiple flames, and therefore it's the optimum manner to have multiple flames, but not necessarily required.
It could be two candles together also.
Okay, so we're gonna get to that. That's right. So the point here, that's right. So the point is more than one source of flame that creates like multiple flames as opposed to one neat flame. Right? So Lashon Riboy Ma'odeh, this is an expression of multiple sources of light. As I mentioned, the word Ma'odeh is not lights, it's sources of light. Ma'or is a source of light. So it's creator, the one who creates multiple flames of the fire, multiple sources of light from the fire. And thus it's best to have many. This idea comes from the Ran, as per the footnotes here. As per footnote 13, the Hebrew footnote. Nonetheless, even if he's only using one flame, because he doesn't have more than one flame, he only has one wick burning, he should still say B'nai Ma'odeh Eish. So in addition to what I said, or actually not what I said, which is I have one of the many flames that God created, but actually says even more. Because even an individual flame has many colors. This is actually from the Gemara itself. If I remember correctly, the Gemara there discusses Hillel's view as to why this is the formulation in Hillel's view, that we describe it in the plural, Ma'odeh Eish, who created luminary sources of light from the fire. That language implies that a fire itself has multiple sources of light, as opposed to many sources of light coming from many fires. It's many sources of light coming from one fire.
In that opinion, you only need one.
So even if you have one, you would still work. That's right. Why would it still work even in that language? Because every flame has multiple colors.
You argue also that some would argue there that you only need one.
On the basic level, you only need one. It augments it if you have more. That's the point. Right. So it's the optimum manner, not required. Because every there are many colors in the flame. You have the red flame, lavana, the white one, the rakrakas, and green. Look closely at the flame. You can see multiple colors, all of which is discussed in Kabbalah at great length, the various different colors, to the point that the one that's close, the flame that's closest to the wick is actually transparent. Right? It's completely transparent to get closest to the flame, which is ironic. The greatest bittul, as the Kabbalah explains at great length, it doesn't even have any of its own identity, but it's the essence of fire. Anyway, but that's for a Kabbalistic class another time. Okay, so continues the Alter Rebbe. So now some details about this. Okay, so we know we have that in the optimum manner we have multiple sources of light because of many wicks coming together, many torches, many burning items coming together, and that way we have this plural in the optimum manner. Even though if you don't have it, the plural still applies because there's many colors to the flame, And because, as I mentioned, with fruit of the tree in general, we can speak in the plural, and we are only enjoying one of the plural. Continues Alter Rebbe. V'ner shel shemen, a candle of oil, shesh psilas harbe, that have many wicks, dolkas that are burning. Harei avuka, this constitutes a torch, even though it's not really a torch, but it has many flames coming together, many wicks coming together, even if it's from one oil lantern, let's say. Now, even if you only have two pieces of wood burning together, or you have two wicks on one candle. If they aren't in two different mouths of the candle. See, the candle back then were like you've seen those like those lanterns, those old lanterns that have like a spout. They look like genie bottles. But that's what lanterns used to look like. Where you have like it's like you have this bowl, and then a spout that comes out, and you put a wick in the spout, and the wick drinks the oil from the bowl. So you can have multiple such spouts. Now, if you have multiple such spouts, then it wouldn't be a torch anymore because each flame is separate from each other. It's only when the two flames are coming out of one spout. Or in our case, we have one candle of beeswax with multiple wicks on top that all come together to make one flame. So it has to be two sources of candle, but one flame, not separate. Right, to be touching. That's the point.
So you can have multiple spouts out of that.
But as long as the wicks touch together.
When they come together.
That's right. Yeah. So then Harei Avuka, it's considered this constitutes and satisfies the idea of having a torch because it has more than one
Like a
wick.
chandelier. It's all wired.
Right, but that wouldn't be a torch
Yeah.
because it's not one.
Different
They're
lights.
not one.
That's right. It's multiple. So it has to be right. So it comes from one. It's about multiple sources of burning coming to one, merging into one.
Like a bonfire.
Yeah, bonfire is like the two pieces of wood with a bonfire. Yeah, torch. Now, likewise, is two candles. Shel shemen, if it's of oil, let's say two such lanterns with one spout each. Shel shaiva, or two wax candles. V'chelev, or fat, some other burning, some fuel. That are brought near to each other. With bakum yachad, to the point that their flames are not touching each other, are joined together. This constitutes a torch. So if all you have is a box of matches, like two matches, hold them together. Because you have multiple sources of light together. But if you have two candles, but their lights aren't touching, each candle is considered independent. You have to be very close to each other. Ellen came unless. This is that classic HAVDALAH candle. You what's the word, woven or like twisted two candles one into the other, and you turn them into one candle. Then it becomes a torch. So either you have one wax candle with a bunch of wicks, or you have two wax candles, put them together, or you have two wax candles woven together, at the top of which you have one flame coming, which is what our classic braided HAVDALAH candles look like. Is really, it's a bunch of candles woven together. Now, this is an interesting halacha that Alter Rebbe puts in the parentheses, which, as I mentioned before, parentheses seems to be Alter Rebbe's chiddush. What Alter Rebbe add here? If you wove together two candles, you have the HAVDALAH candle, right? And sometimes, it's possible that the HAVDALAH candle, the wick all the way on the right and the wick all the way on the left are lit, and the ones in the middle aren't. So the two flames aren't actually even touching each other. But because they're woven together, constitutes torch. That's what Alter Rebbe writes here, which is a chiddush. Because till now he said that what makes them a torch is when you have the two flames together. He's saying even if the wicks are together, even if the candles are together, but it so happens to be on top, the flames aren't together, because the because they are been connected together, it constitutes the halach of a torch. This is what he says in that parentheses there, which is a chiddush. And I don't see any footnote here, assuming that this is Alter Rebbe's original idea, because I don't see any footnote for a source. Okay, that concludes the toiv lizar. It's best to be careful, not to use wood that produce a foul smell when you burn them. Shakarin kin, which is called kin. I'm not sure what language it is. And I see in English it just says kin, some kind of wood that makes a foul smell. Don't use that. If you have others available to you. Because on Matzah Shabbos we were required to restore our soul with a good smell, which is why we smell the psalmim. So don't ruin that with having candles that are burned smelling no good.
Probably the resin or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Now, v'yesh noegim, there are those that have the custom, and this is indeed the Chabad practice, based on Kabbalah. So yesh noegim, there are those who have a custom, etama yedua lahem, for reasons known to them, Kabbalistic reasons, lahavdalah vuka menir shashayv, to light a Havdalah candle made out of a torch using beeswax specifically, and not using other candles nor other pieces of nor wood. That's our custom, although it's not required, but it's our custom. So you can see that they have pictures there of the woven candles. We're all familiar with these pictures, and the lamp with many wicks. Final halacha, in halacha hey, that's related to this topic. In avoka, if he doesn't have a torch available, still in best case scenario, to light a candle for Havdalah, in addition to the candle that's already lit for your home. Okay, so we today have electric lights, but before electricity, you had lamps around your house, little flames. So says the Alter Rebbe, it's best to light a candle uniquely for Havdalah and not to use the one in your home. Right? That's what he says there. Then he adds in the parentheses, so if you look at footnote 19, he adds, thereby satisfying the requirement for multiple sources of light. Here too, you created a little bit more multiple sources of light because you have the one candle that you have to keep your house light, and then you let a second one for Havdalah. This is im yef shel kalvaram, if you can't bring them next to each other. Okay, so in other words, like this. If you already have a candle burning in your house, so he's telling you, if for whatever reason you can't bring the candle that you're lighting next to the candle that you have hanging to keep your house light, that's still better than using the light from your house. So in other words, let's just say you have multiple levels of candle. The most basic thing is the candle you have, make a bracha, even if that candle is the candle you use to keep your house light. Next level is you light a candle from that, and that way, at least in somewhat, you have multiple sources of light because you lit a second candle. Better than that would be to take that candle you have, that you lit now for Havdalah, and bring it near the candle that you have to keep your house light. Now you have multiple candles together. Better than that is a torch. Literally, we have two wicks together. Even better than that, the Kabbalistic is to have it made out of beeswax. So those are your multiple levels of getting better and better in terms of what candle you have for Havdalah. So it's just funny how we have.
But the braidedness is not.
So again,
being braided together is not necessarily better than just having two candles together.
Even
a braided candle.
He didn't say which one's better in that regard. He said it counts as a candle, as a torch.
Okay.
Yeah. So he adds in the footnote 21 here an interesting point, which is that on Yom Tif, when we do Yak Nahaz, right? You're making Havdalah Saturday night, which is Yom Tif, and you're making Havdalah in your Kiddush, and in there you make a bracha on the candles. But when you're holding your cup of wine, you're not. Which candles are you using now to make the bracha on the candles? You're using your Yom Tif candles, the one your wife lit earlier, making the bracha on Lahadak Ner Shel Yom Tif, or Yom Tif candles. you're not putting your cup down in the middle of your benching, middle of your kiddush and Havdalah, and putting the candles together to make your bracha go like this with your nails. You're just sitting on the table. And yet, right, we still make the Ma'orei Ha'esh, and we count that as multiple sources of light because you're looking at two candles, even though they're not conjoined. So that's the same rationale for someone who, for whatever reason, can't bring the candle next to the light that he's using for his home, and it still constitutes more than one light, even though they're not touching. So best case scenario, it's a torch in which the multiple sources of light are touching. If they're not, they're still considered multiple sources of light because you have more than one source of light in your house. One you look uniquely for Havdalah, one that's hanging over there. Just like on Saturday night, you have two candles on your table that you're using for your Havdalah, which you also use for your bracha of Yom Tov candles, but you're not conjoining them. Right? So what's interesting here, that I was saying before, is that you have one little line in the Gemara. What's the whole line? Rava told the student, don't you know that in best case scenario, you're supposed to have a torch? That was the whole statement. And from there came in all these multiple levels.
Why that's the only place in the
That's
Gemara
it.
that it talks about?
That's it. All the other details here came from sources post-Gemara, analyzing this and saying, okay, well, what constitutes a torch? How do I define torch? All he said was avuka, torch. How do I define that? What's the rationale behind it? Okay, if the rationale behind it is, as Ran said, is to have multiple sources of light, okay, the minimum of multiple is 2. So once you have 2, that's already constitutes a torch, if the point is to have multiple sources of light. Right? Now, if the point is to have multiple sources of light, well, then if they're not conjoined, it's still considered multiple sources of light, right? So this is all like deductive reasoning that happens for generations after the Gemara writes just one little line. So we have these 2 full paragraphs here.
I don't understand what you said by for Shabbos you have 2 candles lit.
When it's Saturday night is Yom Tov.
Candles are over.
1 second. Saturday night is Yom Tov.
Okay.
So your wife lights candles for Yom Tov.
So she lights it for the existing flame.
She lights it from an existing flame, but she lights candles for Yom Tov.
What if that existing flame goes out?
Fine. You're a Shabbos guy. You're okay. So you have no choice. You can't light a candle then. Or you go whatever. You go to your neighbor next door and get a candle. Right? But let's just this is why you brought up here. It's Saturday night, and you're making kiddush for Yom Tov and Havdalah for Shabbos. Right? That's this whole unique ceremony we described before. You're making 5 brachas at one. Yaknahaz, right? You're making bracha on your wine, you're making a bracha on kiddush, you're making a bracha on candle, you're making a bracha on Havdalah, and you're making a bracha shechayonim. Right? Okay. So when you make a bracha on the candle as part of your Havdalah, which is now being joined with your kiddush, which candle are you using to make that Havdalah, make that bracha? You're using the candles your wife just lit for Yom Tov. Right? But you're still holding your kiddush cup. So it's not like a regular Saturday night where you put your kiddush cup down, conjoin the flames, and put your nails to it. You're not doing that. You're holding the cup the whole time. All you're doing is looking at the candles as you make the bracha over the candles. You're making the same bracha Ma'orei Ha'esh with the same plural, the same text. Which plural candles are you looking at? The 2 your wife lit for Yom Tov. They're not conjoined, and yet we still consider it plural.
Shouldn't you have to separate that you have the light candle and your olive, and then what you're doing 2 stones or? That's a good
question. Especially since we learned here that you're not supposed to combine what's just more than once. Yeah. So that's a good question. And add a little twist here. Both the bracha for Ma'orei Ha'esh on Saturday night and the candles that you light for Yom Tov are actually not mitzvah candles. They're candles of enjoyment. The blessing you're making is over enjoying it. Following? Enjoying the light. As opposed to, say, the Hanukkah candles. This is a classic, what's the word? Like opposites. Distinction. Hanukkah candles, you're not supposed to enjoy the candles at all. Whereas Shabbos candles, you're meant to enjoy. So the commandment is to enjoy the candles. So when you make a bracha, you commanded us to light the Shabbos candles, it's a commandment to enjoy the candles. And the bracha Ma'orei Ha'esh on Saturday night is thank you very much that I have candles to enjoy. So they're exactly the same thing. That's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. I'm meant to enjoy. I'm thanking Hashem Motzei Shabbos for the fact that I can enjoy light. And then on Yom Tov, I'm lighting candles as a mitzvah to enjoy light.
So you could do.
Yeah. With one important distinction. On Shabbos candles, because Shabbos and Yom Tov candles are meant to enjoy, to produce light, in theory, you could make the bracha on your electric lights.
You can.
You can. We spoke about this before. If someone's in a hospital or whatever, they don't let you light candles, you can make the bracha and flick on the light switch. And that's it. Right? Or they have like these electric tea light looking things, and you make the bracha and turn it on. You have them sitting there the whole Shabbos. Yeah, they have those for these kinds of scenarios. You cannot do that with Ma'ir Aish. You cannot do that with the Saturday night one. Just listen to the translation. Ma'ir Aish. Thank you for creating luminaries that come from fire. Your electric light's not fire. So that's the one distinction. That you can't, on Saturday night, you can't use electric light for this bracha, but on Shabbos you could. But nonetheless, they're still both to be enjoyed. And therefore they can be done with the same candles.
So if you have a 48-hour candle that you light at Shabbos,
On a regular Shabbos,
before Shabbos,
going in Saturday night is Yom Tov.
you have Saturday night is Yom Tov.
Yeah.
So you can just light it from that.
Yeah. That's
That's the best.
why they sell those.
Yeah.
In the old day, they didn't need this stuff, because in the old day, everybody had in their house, everybody had a long, my understanding is that everybody had like in one designated area in their house, a long lasting flame. Buy some cheap fuel and have it going for a long time. Yeah, they used to use
Used to go to the BP, the Shell station.
yeah, sure. No, they use, and then you had that one flame, and then you would light all your candles from that flame as you needed. Yeah, at least in naft, and then later they would use
Use crude oil.
crude oil, but they also use whale fat. They go right in areas like here where they can go whaling. That was the big business. There's lots and lots of fat to burn. Anyway, apparently it burns very slow too. So
Talking about whales, a lot of the
Captain
salt-
Ahab, right? That's what he was doing.
A lot of the salt in the sea comes from the sperm whale.
Oh yeah, interesting. Okay, so there you have the halacha of the torch, and God willing, today's Monday. So tomorrow we'll get to the text of Havdalah itself, because we're still going to go in this narrative, right? Rav Acha Bar Yaakov is observing Rava and asking him what he's doing as he goes along. So he's watching him light from a torch, wants to know what you're doing. Now we learn what he's doing. He's having multiple flames, and we learn the halacha about that. And then he's going to actually make Havdalah, and he's going to listen. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov is going to be listening to Rava's text of Havdalah, and the text we use today, that text comes from the Gemara we're going to learn tomorrow, and then we're going to get into other types of texts that you might be able to use. The text where you have Saturday night going into Yom Tov, right? You're not separating between Shabbos and weekday. We're separating between Shabbos and Yom Tov. What do you say then? That whole text is going to come from the Gemara that we're going to learn tomorrow, God willing, and we'll look at the Shulchan Aruch as it discusses this text.
Yeah, see, that was another miracle. I read it's marked over here in the Shulchan Aruch that Adam banged two stones together and fire came out.
That's why we do Matzah Shabbos. That's why he opens up this chapter.
Yep.
The reason
you can't get fire from two stones.
Sure.
You get a spark.
Right. Yeah. As long as you have something to catch it.
Yeah, some tinder.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful parable for the idea of one on a Friday, and then you can chat with you after Shabbos.
He spent one night in the dark and said, "We got to fix this."
Exactly.
Right? That's basically what happened.
Exactly.
He was born right before Shabbos started, so he spent his first 12 hours of life.
Yeah.
Not the first 12 hours, because first he had to do this. First, he had to do the sin
Yeah.
before he started anything.
Exactly.
First thing being alive is sin, and then it came dark for a little while, and he realized, "Oh my gosh, I got to figure out how to make candle."
Because the woman made him sin, she took the light out of the world. And
So you have to
that's
restore
why
light
Friday
Matzah
night-
Shabbos. Yeah, that I read that. Yes, I read that. Friday night, the women light candles as a tikkun to. Yeah.
But she really didn't make him sin because Satan who convinced him.
Yeah, you know what the modern name for Satan is? Yetzer Hara.
Devil.
Yetzer Hara. Okay, it's the same thing. The Nachash is the Yetzer Hara. It's the Satan. It's all the same thing.
No, but you started a beautiful way, and could almost be the title for this lecture, the basic way. The evidence speaks for itself. Because of the student who was doing what he was doing, he started to, and you had to ask him, why
Yeah.
was he doing this? So the evidence speaks for itself. when you
Right.
think of it, the whole idea of me'or, the source of light, and if you look at what you're doing, the whole idea of me'or, source of light, is what gives light.
Right.
So they hope to me'or,
Oh, like this, like the teacher, Rav is being the source of light to his student.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah. So the evidence speaks for itself. When you see something, that's why students very often just watch their rebbes. All the evidence everywhere, even hiding and doing anything, just to have
Just
the
have
evidence
a
speaks
keen
for
eye and
itself.
make sure you're observing.
So if our 24-hour candle ever goes out, I can always bring you in.
You can always come to my house.
No, I can bring you to our house. You're a source of light.
No,
Very
thank you.
good.
Appreciate that.
That's very, very true. Beautiful.
Okay, wonderful day, Yidden.
Resip, right?
Sorry?
In Latin.
Yes.